Alrighty, everybody. It is currently Monday, July 7th, the year of our Lord, 2025. All right. Our Lord Jesus Christ. If your Lord is Muhammad or Allah or fucking Yahweh or Vishnu or Kishnu or whoever those poop eaters worship, go on and get your ass out of here. All right. Because in here we worship Jesus Christ, the one real God, the one guy who figured it all out. No, I'm not. Don't care at all. Don't care at all which one you're going for. Just don't bring it around me. All right? Don't be fucking don't be going into a synagogue or a church or a wherever the fuck Muslims go to do their fucking yodels or whatever and shoot it up. Don't be doing that. But whatever you want to do is fine. I don't think I could ever be religiphobic like that, or whatever the fucking term is. I have no idea. But I don't think I could like truly hate someone for their religion or just hate a religion as a whole. Islam is, I mean, it seems like they're trying to make me do it, but I just don't think I can. I don't think it's really something that I could care about too much. Just hating an entire group of people like that. Hating 2 billion. That's a rough ride. That's not easy at all. But there is one group of people, in spite of my general lackadaisical nature and lack of care when it comes to life, there is one group of people that I can always 100% for a fact continue my hate for, continue my grudge against this group of inconsiderate, dangerous, I would say borderline violent people who truly, truly only care about themselves. And that group of people is the cyclists, right? And I get it. Sometimes you got a DUI, right? And you got to ride to your job at Lowe's or Walmart or whatever shitty fucking concrete company you work at. I understand that type of cyclist. I understand the type of cyclist, you live in like New York City or fucking Chicago or Boston or some shit like that, and they have bike paths and stuff, and it's a more bike friendly city. But that's not where I live. All right, I live in the hot, sprawling, expansive, fucking unorganized, shitty suburbs. All right, I live outside of them, but I have to go into them all the time because that's where all the stuff is. And you can't be riding a bike on a fucking road like that. All right, on a road that's not really even designed for cars, to be fair. These roads are, I mean, just so poorly designed in every way imaginable. They're really not even designed for cars to ride on them, let alone bikes. And you shouldn't, you certainly should not be riding your bike in the middle of the fucking country. All right, it's unacceptable. The roads are barely wide enough to fit 2 cars on them normally, and now your bitch ass is over here taking up an entire lane. By the way, that's how inconsiderate these people are. That they literally, it's not just like being loud and like doing whatever the fuck. You're literally somehow you're one person, but you take up an entire fucking lane, an entire segment of lane too. You take up more space than a regular car if you're riding a bike. I want you to know that. If you're riding a bike on a street that doesn't have a bike lane, you're taking up more space than a normal car. Because for one, I don't want to kill you. I do want to kill you, but at the same time, I don't want to deal with the repercussions of killing you. Maybe that's the right way to put it. I do want to murder you. I do want to end your life. I do want to, 100% for a fact ensure that you never spread this evil again. I do want to do that. I just don't want to go to jail. It seems like a pretty big problem for me. It seems like I probably could get away with being like, oh, well, I didn't see him. I could do that, but I don't want to do that. That's just, it's too much trouble for me to go through. But, just know that's what's going through everyone's mind. The most I can do is flip someone off, and these fucking idiots, they're not looking. They're not looking at your car when you're flipping them off. They're not looking at anyone. They're not looking at anything because they're not aware of their surroundings. They don't even care about their surroundings. They don't care if you're, a pregnant mother trying to drive yourself to the hospital, right? Because your abusive husband drank himself into a stupor and now no one can drive you. They don't care if that's the case. They don't care if you're, late to a job interview because your fucking car wouldn't start because it's a piece of shit. They don't care about that. And you have to understand, I'm not talking about people, like I said, that are just riding their bikes to work because they're too poor or too much of an alcoholic to be able to drive a car, right? I'm talking about these fucking assholes who think they're triathletes, right? Like seriously, this is the equivalent of that is if I was like if I was driving like a fucking NASCAR around, and just loud as hell, driving fast as shit, driving shitty fucking tires that like pop constantly, right? Because those NASCAR tires, they're like super thin, like that's how they're designed. And I was just driving one of those around. That's the equivalent of these people who ride their bikes like they're fucking triathletes, like they're in the fucking Olympics or something like that. Because here's the thing, if you were good enough to be in the Olympics or really any real bike riding competition, you wouldn't have to ride your bike on the road. That's the fucking thing about it, right? You're never going to be anything in life, right? Like I hate to break it to you. If your goal is to be able to ride a bike well and you can't even do fucking that, you're never going to be anything in life. It's a stupid goal to have. It is. It's a very dumb goal to have. It's an incredibly impractical goal to have, especially for a lot of these people. A lot of these people are fucking like they're old. We shouldn't be surprised by that. We shouldn't be surprised that it's fucking like boomers and like early Gen Xers being like, I need to ride my bike. We shouldn't be surprised that it's the most selfish generation of people to ever exist that are doing this. But I don't know. I kind of am. You'd expect it to be young people. And maybe young people aren't doing it because none of them have any hope for anything. But the boomers, they keep doing it. They keep and I feel like a lot of them are like, oh, I ride my bike for exercise, to sustain your life. No one wants you alive. No one, no one wants you alive. We want you all to die as quickly as possible so that we can fucking make a scramble for your home and maybe be able to live one quarter of the life that you lived. Live a life that's one quarter as good as the life you lived. That's what we want if you're a boomer. So if you're a boomer and you're listening to this, I did check the like analytics of the thing because I was just interested because we are up to what is it 12 followers and 6 ratings, so it's going good. It's not going horrible. Look, when you start at 0, literally anything is better than nothing. So I mean, thank you for that. I do genuinely, I am, that does make me happy just knowing that people are happy listening to this. Unless you ride a bike on the street. Unless you ride a bike on the street, if that might be the only negative of doing this is that I accidentally, make a street bike rider laugh because those people should have no enjoyment in their lives, really, of any kind. They shouldn't. Their family should all abandon them as quickly. Like I'm saying, I'm not calling for anyone's death here, but if I had to choose a group of people that all needed to die, it would be those people. It's like I said, they're so inconsiderate. And it's just dangerous as a whole. It's dangerous for them. It's dangerous for me. Riding my truck around is already pretty fucking dangerous. The airbags, they did like a recall on the airbags. The brakes don't really work. It's not the greatest car to be driving around. I don't think it's going to explode or like kill me or anything, but I don't feel as safe in my car as I do in some other people's car. Some cars that have that have airbags. I'm basically living in the 70s. I don't have AC, I don't have airbags. I'm just driving around a fucking 2-ton steel battering ram. But it's already kind of dangerous driving it, but then you add an extra element of some dude who's pedaling it. And by the way, these bikes cost probably just as much as my car. These bikes are $2,000+ if I had to guess. Some of them, I'm sure there's cheaper ones that are like $300, but the really nice ones are hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars in some cases. So you're already making it more dangerous for me because now I got to try to swerve around you so that I can get to where I'm going in less than 3 hours. I'm going on a 30-minute drive here, and if I was to, follow your rules, it would take me 3 hours because you're a fucking idiot. And I mean, they're just so dumb. And it's people are like, "Oh, I ride a bike and I'm not dumb." Well, then you're just an inconsiderate asshole, which is 1,000 times worse than just being dumb. Because you can just be. There's a lot of people that are just dumb. Hey, hey, this is the pot calling the kettle black here, dude. I'm definitely part of that crew. There's a lot of people that are just dumb, and then there's just being wholly inconsiderate, right? And this isn't someone, right, that's just driving this vehicle or this I don't know, is a bike a vehicle, whatever the fuck you want to call it, driving this machine because they have to, right? It's not like I said, I drive a shitbox car. I can't always go as fast. I can't always brake as quick as everyone else. I can't always make the best turns. But like I have to. I have to drive that car if I want to, go to work or if I want to like buy food or whatever the fuck. I need to drive that car. You don't need to ride that bike anywhere. I know you fucking drove out into the country in your $30,000, $50,000 fucking car and then took that bike off the back of it so you could ride it around in the country because you don't care about these people. And that also should not be surprising that no one cares about people in rural areas. I mean, historically that's where you put the people you hate, right? Like in the United States of America, that's where they put all the Indians. They just put them in like the most rural areas imaginable in the most shittiest fucking places. Right? Those are the people that are typically poisoned. There's a lot of people are poisoned in urban areas as well, right? By like chemical runoff and shit like that. But the rural areas, they got it pretty tough in that regards. So you shouldn't be surprised that these fucking suburbanites, who are just the biggest idiots on earth, just generally have not made a right decision ever. You shouldn't be surprised that someone who chooses to live in a $700,000 house that was built in a week by a team of Mexicans who have never fucking built a house before, right? A house that's basically built out of plywood and is held together with duct tape, and the wiring doesn't fucking work at all, and it costs $700,000. You shouldn't be surprised that someone who puts themselves in that house, who puts themselves in that situation, is also the type of person who doesn't care about the world around them at all. They don't even care about themselves. So you shouldn't be surprised that they don't care about the world around them. And that's ultimately what it boils down to. And I don't even think they think about the world around them, right? I'm sure some of them, it's an act of maliciousness. That's what I assume, actually, every single time. I assume this person is just outright being malicious, but I think it's just a general lack of care around the world around them. These people, maybe not all of them are boomers, but they have the boomer spirit in them. They have that ethos of, I'm going to do what I want, and I don't care what anyone else thinks about it. And it's not even beneficial to their lives at all. You can seriously, like riding a bike, it's decent cardio, but just jog you can jog for like 30 minutes and get the same amount of cardio that you do on like a 3-hour fucking bike ride. It's not hard, dude. I've ridden a bike 24 miles in a day before. Not really that fucking hard at all. It's pretty, and I'm not riding these same bikes that these fucking people are riding, and I'm not riding on like a smooth road surface. I'm riding on like trails and shit. And so these people, they're not even really getting that hard of a workout. I could do that. I could do what they're doing very easily. And I just hate them. I really do. And I think that's a good, nice little rant to get to prepare ourselves for this episode, because this episode, it involves a lot of hate. Maybe I should have gone with more of a palate cleanser. Maybe I should have, maybe been a little more thankful for the people that are listening to this podcast and like following it and rating it. And I am very thankful. Even if it ultimately means nothing, even if, nothing I want out of this comes and I don't really want anything out of this, but even if it just, this podcast eventually fades into obscurity. I mean, it's not really going to fade into obscurity. It's already in obscurity, but if it fades out of existence, I am thankful that at least a couple people enjoyed it, because that's the ultimate goal. And so yeah, let's get our palates cleansed. All right, let's talk about some good things that are going on in the world. What's a good thing that's going on? That dude doing the 50-day road trip challenge, Ryan Trahan, that guy on YouTube. I don't know, that's enjoyable. his girlfriend's pretty hot. So I mean, yeah, that does make my life a little bit better, looking at his hot girlfriend and looking at him go on a road trip to fucking Connecticut or Maryland or wherever the fuck he's at. That does make my life a little bit better. And bikes, I don't know, no kids are riding bikes anymore, right? That's another thing that the boomers stole from the children, is riding bikes. Every kid you see, at least around the suburbs that I live near, they don't ride like conventional bikes anymore, like bikes that you have to pedal. They all ride either electric scooters or electric bikes. That's all they ride. And it's fucking absurd, and I hate it so much, but I don't want to get into it. I really do hate it, and I hate the boomers more for stealing the bikes from the kids. I mean, the people that should be riding the bikes, the children, aren't riding them, and the people that shouldn't be, decrepit old people, are riding the bikes. A lot of hate this episode. A lot of hate. I mean, from beginning to end. That's the history of South Sudan, man. If you really want it summed up in one word, it is hate. But, in an instance like this where it seems like it's all negative, we do have to look at the positive side of it. And that's that, South Sudan is kind of the Wild West, and we'll get into that a little bit. But first, we're going to start with the early history of South Sudan. So, The migration of Nilotic tribes to South Sudan began in the 10th century BC, or 10th century normal, AD, whatever AD stands for. I always go with after death. I know it's something in Latin, but it's like, I'm not speaking Latin, dude. I can barely speak English. And so they arrived in South Sudan due to the fall of the Christian Nubian kingdoms, and it didn't say why. I kept Googling this, dude. And if you want to know how complicated the situation in South Sudan is, like how convoluted and how many fucking, storylines are coming together to create this situation, I had at least 10 tabs open just trying to figure out what the fuck is going on in South Sudan. And I don't normally have more than two tabs open at the same time when I'm like researching for this shit. So it's incredibly complicated, but I blamed it on Arabization. And if you don't know, the Arabs, basically from the creation of Islam, right? And it's called Arabization because Islam and, being Arabic, those two things were kind of one and the same for many, 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 many years. Really, up until, I mean, even now, they're kind of one and the same. Like every country that is a majority Islamic has been Arabized, really, other than Indonesia. They're all very heavily Arabized, and so that's kind of what was going on at the time. It's called Arabization. You could call it Islamization, but once again, they're kind of one and the same. And from the very beginning, these Arab, kingdoms, kings, warrior groups, whatever the fuck, they were going out North Africa, the Middle East. They went even up into Europe at one point, and they were just trying to conquer everything, Arabize it, and turn these people into Muslims. And that, I mean, I don't know. I've never read the Quran, but I do know that Muhammad, he was like some type of like warlord, war leader, some shit like that. And so it does kind of make sense that that's just kind of their ethos. And to be fair, to be fair, the Christians, especially the Catholics, have not been the most kind to everybody, in the history of the world. And it's funny. It's funny when people like try to defend that. Like I was listening to the Shane Gillett, like what's it, Matt and Shane's secret podcast, and they were talking about like the Aztecs, right? And the Aztecs used to sacrifice people. That was like their whole thing. They thought the sun wouldn't rise if they sacrificed people. And then the Spanish came in, and obviously we know what happened there. Mexico doesn't speak Aztec or whatever the fuck. They speak Spanish. So they came in and they gave them what for. But people, it's this weird dichotomy, I guess, that kind of exists of the people who think that these indigenous groups, like the Aztecs, for example, are just completely innocent of everything, right? Like they've never done anything wrong, and that the colonists caused all the evil in this area. And then there's the other side of it, of the people who are like, they see the evil that these indigenous groups did, but then they think that the Spanish are the good guys in this scenario. They're not the good. There's no good guy in that scenario, and really in most of these scenarios. In South Sudan, yeah, there's not really too much of a good guy, but in the instance of the Aztecs, it's right. The Aztecs were sacrificing people, and then the Spanish came in, right, and the Spanish had Catholicism, Christianity, and like the whole thing about Christianity, love thy neighbor. It's more of a peaceful religion when put in comparison to Islam. It's but that's true of every religion. Every religion is a peaceful religion when put in comparison to Islam. But Christianity is especially one of those. And the way the people who justify or defend the Spanish Empire, the conquistadors, look at it is like, well, they were sacrificing people, and then the Spanish made them stop that. But then you think about it, right? And it's like, how did the Spanish stop the Aztecs from enslaving the Mayans and sacrificing them to their sun god? And it's like, well, they killed all of them. That's how they stopped the human sacrifice. They said, no more human sacrifice. And you know how we're going to solve that? We're just going to basically do human sacrifice on a mass scale. We're just going to kill every single one of you guys. And I don't know. I think maybe there's like a human desire to look for a good guy and a bad guy in a situation. And sometimes there is. Sometimes there truly is a bad guy, and the good guys came in and put a stop to it. But in the instance of like the Aztecs and there is no good guy. The Aztecs were sacrificing people and enslaving, these Mayan tribes and basically using them as human cattle. But what the Spanish did wasn't any better. It's just, I don't know. I think that whole thing is weird. Of just like wanting to look for a good guy in that scenario. There is no good guy. In South Sudan, we'll get into a little bit, but there is kind of a good guy. But anyway, I believe that these Christian Nubian kingdoms fell in the 10th century due to Arab conquest, because at that time they were in northern Africa. They were even in Europe during that time. They were in Spain and Italy, I think maybe a little bit during that time, but I know that definitely they were in Spain. And so, I don't know. The fucking history nerds, maybe they're too scared to say it. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with them, but they never came to a conclusion. I could not find a conclusion as to why the Christian Nubian kingdoms fell in the 10th century. But knowing the history of the world at the time and the history of Sudan and South Sudan, I would venture to guess it was due to Arab conquest. And so the the Nubian kingdoms, those were more in like regular Sudan, right? And obviously it's Sudan, and then below it is South Sudan. That's really all you need to know in terms of geography for this. And so from the 15th century to the 19th century, the various tribes moved to and settled in their modern day territories. And so I turned into RFK at some point in every episode. Every episode, like they turned into and they went to their modern territories, but that's what they were doing. And so these Christian Nubian kingdoms fell. And an important thing to know is that when I say Nilotic, that's basically just like these kind of northern African tribes, right? African people, Bantu African people. They're not, what you think of when you think of North Africans, right? With like Egyptians and Moroccans and shit like that. This area had not been yet fully Arabized. And so these were black Africans. It's for some people that term is maybe a little redundant, but when you know the history of Africa, then you kind of know that the term black Africans really isn't that redundant. There's a whole ton of different shit going on there. And so the four largest tribes in modern day South Sudan are the Dinka, the Nuer, the Zonde, and the Bori. There's a ton of tribes, but those are the four big ones. And the Dinka are the largest and historically the most dominant tribe. And so that's going to come into play a lot later. The Dinka, they controlled the most territory during, the tribal times. They in the history of South Sudan, in the region of South Sudan, even before it became a country, the Dinka were the dominant force in really particularly politics. They controlled the most area, but in terms of like politics, they were the most dominant tribe. And South Sudan remained largely un-Arabized due to the natural barriers created by the White Nile. I didn't know there was multiple Nile rivers, but I guess there's like a blue Nile and a red Nile and a white Nile. And the White Nile, I think there's multiple Niles in South Sudan, but the White Nile basically like spreads out. I think especially during the rainy season, and it spreads out and it creates all these swamps that the Arab invaders could not cross. And so Sudan, regular Sudan, it's heavily Arabized. They all have like Muslim names. Their names are all like Khalid, Al Faik, or whatever the fuck, and they're all very light skinned and they're all Muslim. But then South Sudan, they're all dark skinned, traditionally what you'd think of when you think of an African person. They're very tribal as opposed to the North, where the North, regular Sudan is, and that's how I'm going to refer to it. I'm just going to call South Sudan the South and North Sudan the North. And in the North, they all exist under this umbrella of, being an Arabized Islamic group of people. Whereas in the South, yeah, they're all Christians. That's an important thing. I don't know if I wrote that down, but they're all Christians down there, but they're all different tribes. So, and that's a thing about Christianity that historically, like you look at it, and especially in comparison to Islam, Christianity kind of was far more tolerant in terms of allowing people to continue their culture. In the case of South Sudan, it does seem to be a major detriment to allow this for these Christian groups of people that came in there and spread the word, spread the gospel or whatever, and continued to allow them to be tribal. It does seem like a detriment in this scenario, but in others it's completely fine. So I don't know. I think South Sudan has always been destined to be fucked. Right, so that's kind of like the early pre-colonial history of it, a little bit about the Arabization of North Africa. And now we're on to Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. And so during this time, Anglo-Egyptian Sudan contained the modern countries of Sudan, which I'm going to call the North, and South Sudan, which obviously I'm going to call the South, dude. Just being an American, learn about our history, especially the Civil War. It's just easier for me to call one side the North and one side the South, dude. especially in this instance. And so this area was under the joint authority of the UK and Egypt. So it wasn't really like a full-blown colony, especially for the English, because historically, you look at English colonization and they didn't colonize like everyone else. That's why they were the best colonists of any of the any of the Asian powers, any of the Arab powers. Maybe that's up for debate. But the English were definitely the best of the European colonizers because they didn't just colonize an area, right? Like the rest of Europe, when they colonized an area, they would just put a few people in there to extract resources, and then they would collect money from the resources that those people from their country extracted. But what the English did was very different, right? Like you look at America, for example. When the English colonized North America, they did settler colonialism, which is, I mean, it's what it sounds like. You send a ton of people, just waves and waves of fucking people to go to this place and to settle it. But they didn't really do that with Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. I imagine part of it was because Egypt was also, a partner in controlling this area. But despite the compendium, which was, I guess, the official name for it, the area was largely under British control. And this happened, I want to say, in the 1880s, maybe, that Egypt and the UK. Sorry for the crinkling of papers. That's just so funny, dude. But the 1880s or maybe the 1890s, they got together, and I guess for some reason, the Egyptians maybe, they just wanted a colony, even though Sudan does border Egypt, but they just wanted a colony maybe. But I guess England and Egypt got together and they were like, we're going to rule this together. And then the English were like, but we're not. We're not. I'm going to show you what the fuck is going on here. And so it was colonized by the English, but not in the traditional way that they colonize things, right? There, there was never like a substantial population of English settlers really ever in Sudan. And so the British did little to develop the non-Arabized parts of Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, right? So they really only built infrastructure, right? Built roads, hospitals, schools and stuff in the north. The south was, and probably for the same reason that the Arabs were never able to conquest the south. It's just because it's too hard to build there, right? Like all the swamps, the geography of it all. It's really hard to develop, infrastructure in that area, and so they never really focused on it. What they did do is they sent a lot of Christian missionaries to the south, and this reinforced South Sudan's strong Christian identity. Like they were already Christian before the English missionaries got there. Like I said, it was the Nubian Christian kingdoms during the time that eventually went on to be the people that created South Sudan. But the English, they sent a ton of Christian missionaries there as well. But they did nothing else to develop. It's so fucking funny. They were just like, yeah, you guys can have these missionaries. And they were like, can we have a school too? And they were like, no, you can have one poorly constructed church. We're not building you guys a fuck. What are you, out of your mind? We're going to build you a school. We're going to build you roads for what? You guys don't even have fucking cars. And so the English, they basically left it alone. They extracted some resources from it, but it wasn't like the North, right? Like the North is more of like a dry, arid, deserty area that is, it's easier to build infrastructure there, right? It's harder to live there in some ways, but just like the flatness of it, it's easier to build infrastructure in the North. And so they kind of basically just ignored the South for its entire existence as a colony. And in 1956, Egypt and Sudan worked together to demand an end to Egyptian and British rule in the area. And so I guess, like I said, the Egyptians, they didn't really get anything out of this. I think it was just like in name only that they were ruling this area. I'm sure they extracted some resources from it. I'm sure they like colonized it and did some shit in there, but it was mostly just the British. And so the Egyptians were like, all right, we're not getting anything out of this fucking deal anyway. And the British, they're always mucking around in Africa. And so I guess them and Sudan teamed up together and they kicked out the British. And so 1956 was the official end of Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. And now we're on to what I call one Sudan. That's just my name for it. I'm sure I'm gonna piss people off. It's but they don't have fucking internet there, so it's not something I really got to worry about, dude. South Sudan doesn't have food, so I'm pretty sure they don't have internet. So I'm not really too worried, about them. And even if they do have internet, the GDP per capita there is like $400 a year. So none of them are gonna. They're not gonna be buying any fucking plane tickets to come over here and chop my head off or whatever the fuck they do. So I'm not too worried, but I'm just gonna call this period, the post Anglo Egyptian Sudan period, I'm just going to call it one Sudan. And so, from its first election in 1958, Sudan used military rule to attempt to Arabize the South. So, Arabization. There was the golden age of Islam that a lot of people point to. I don't know the exact dates of it. I'll look it up real quick, but it really has continued even to modern day, right? It's from the inception of Islam to modern day. It's really Arabization has been going on, in Africa, in the Middle East, in the Near East. So yeah, the 8th century to the 13th century, so about 700 to 1200 was the golden age of Islam, but Arabization has been it continued really past that point. Like when I was reading about this, I was like looking up when the Arabization of Sudan happened, and they were still doing it. Egypt was still attempting to Arabize Sudan in like the 1820s and stuff like that. So even past the golden age of Islam and like the Islamic conquests and these official names we give to everything, it really continued kind of even up until now, right? Like you look at West Africa, particularly Mali, the country of Mali in West Africa, in Niger as well, they're still experiencing some level of Arabization, right? Like there's these Arab warlords. I'm trying to remember. I think it's mostly in Mali and Niger. I think there's also some in Burkina Faso as well. But there's like these Arab warlords that are coming in and trying to like fuck people up and shit like that. So there's still, or Arabized warlords, I should say. They're not fully Arab, ethnically Arab people, but they're Arabized warlords still going in there and fucking shit up. Still just trying to spread the good word by cutting heads off. So good for them, I guess. I don't know. The Christians had their heyday of that, but they kind of stopped it pretty quick. They kind of stopped cutting people's heads off. They tried like the whole like forced assimilation thing where they like made these people become English basically. That one didn't work out so well. But I mean, you look at Islam. Islam is, I think it's the fastest growing religion in the world. I mean, so look, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's working. And so even before the first election, the South Sudanese were rebelling against the North, who had historically hunted the Southerners for slavery. And this is a very big thing that I think maybe more people are talking about it now. But the Arab slave trade in Africa was bigger than the Atlantic slave trade, I think, at certain points in its history. I think historically, like overall, in terms of how many slaves were taken from Africa, how many black African slaves were taken, the Arab slave trade is way, 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 way bigger, and it went on for way, 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 like way longer than the Atlantic slave trade, right? Like the Atlantic slave trade ended in the 1830s when the United Kingdom officially outlawed slavery. And so from that point, like no new slaves were brought to like America and the New World and stuff like that. Like there was still slavery in North America, especially in America. There was still slavery until the 1860s, but the Arab slave trade didn't officially end until like 1910 or something like that. Like, dude, it's the 20th century, and the Arabs were still going into uh, sub-Saharan or non-Arabized Africa, as I might call it, and they were hunting down people and enslaving them. And so that's what Sudan was doing to South Sudan for basically the entire history of how long those both of those countries have existed. So for the entire history of Sudan and South Sudan, there's always been beef there. So, I mean, for like 1,000 fucking years, these people have been fighting each other as the Arabized North enslaved the Black South. They're not really doing that anymore. Obviously, the UN might give them a little bit of guff if they were still doing that, but Sudan isn't. They're still not too nice to the South. And so, obviously, the Southerners were like, all right, well, you stop taking us as slaves, but you're still trying to like colonize us and Arabize us and like convert us to Islam. And like, dude, we're Christians, we're black Africans, we live this tribal life, we like living this way. Fuck you, fuck off. But Sudan, the North, they just kept fucking persisting. They did not listen to the South. And so the first Sudanese civil war lasted from 1955 until 1972 and saw the installation of socialist Islamist military dictator. This is a tough one, dude. Garafama Hamid, or wait, Gufar Muhammad Naimiri. Naimiri, something like that. We're just gonna call him Gufar, right? It's a simpler name, kind of sounds like Jafar anyway, so we're gonna call him Gufar. And Gufar ended the first civil war by granting autonomy to the non-Islamic South. So hey, shout out to him. And he wasn't the guy that started the civil war, but he was the guy that ended it. So yeah, shout out to that guy. But he was he was like a fucking military dictator. Like he came to power through a coup as well, I think. Right? And I was looking at the history of the leaders of Sudan, and it was like at first it was like a military like tribunal basically that ruled it for the first 2 years from 1956 until 1958. It was ruled over by basically a military council. And then they had their first elections in 1958, and basically from there it's every single leader, every single person that came to power in Sudan until South Sudan became independent, I think, came to power via a coup, right? And if you don't know what a coup is it's usually a military leader coming in and overthrowing the current president or king or prime minister, overthrowing the current leader. And so basically, it's just been war forever in Sudan and South Sudan. And so 500,000 to a million people were killed, uh, and most of the people who were killed were non-combatants in the South. So South Sudan, it's already a pretty small country. Like right now, they don't really know the population of it because South Sudan doesn't really exist like that. Like South Sudan, if you look on a map, you can point to South Sudan on a map, but in terms of like government and a cohesive national identity and borders and just about everything else that makes a country, South Sudan doesn't really fucking exist. And so they don't really know how many people are there. They say it's around 13 million, but it could be fucking 30 million. Like like no one fucking knows how many people live in South Sudan. And I mean, even at a high estimate, I estimated like 30 million. During the 1950s, there was probably like 5 million people in Sudan, and like 250,000 of them were killed during the civil war. And so Sudan then experienced two more coups before Omar al-Bashir rose to power in 1989. And like I'm saying, it's just coup after coup after coup, dude. It's a fucking chicken coop out there. Or a fucking, it's a, it's a fucking, it's a dove fucking birdhouse out there. It's just coups all day, dude. It's a dove farm. Just coup and coup and coup. That's the only way to gain power in Sudan or South Sudan. Really, it kind of seems like the whole of Africa is just a series of coups. And so this guy, Omar al Bashir, came into power. And so by the time al Bashir came to power, the Second Sudanese Civil War had been raging for 6 years. So the Second Sudanese Civil War started in 1983. And remember, the First Sudanese Civil War ended in 1972. So, I mean, that the peace didn't last long. I'm sure both sides broke the treaty, but I'm sure it was the North who, like, really did the things that broke the treaty. You know what I mean? I'm sure they're the ones that were like, you guys still aren't Muslim yet. I think we got to go over there and chop off some more heads. I think if I had to venture, if I had to take a guess, looking at the overall history of it, I would I would venture just a wild guess, you know what I mean? There's really no evidence to support this. There's really no evidence to support Arabization in North Africa, but if I had to guess, I would say the North broke the treaty and went in to South Sudan and tried to Arabize them and convert them to Islam and all that good stuff. And so al-Bashir, I don't know why you would commit a coup during a civil war. It is a good time to commit a coup, you know what I mean? When like the president or whoever's leading the country is kind of distracted. But I do. It's not the best time to inherit a country, you know what I mean? I'd wait till things are a little more chill to inherit the country. But hey, I guess al-Bashir made his decision and he ruled for a while. He ruled for like 30 fucking years or something insane like that. And so the cause of this second civil war was a combination of an attempt to impose Sharia law. And Sharia law is like, an Islamist country, there's Islamic people and then there's like an Islamist government. And an Islamist government basically is a government, it's a religious government, right? It's a government that imposes Sharia law, which is basically, I don't know, like the 10 commandments of Islam. They try to impose that, and it's basically just a government that imposes its religion onto its citizens, but it's a little more militaristic and there's other nuances to it that make it different than certain, you know, Christian governmental organizations, but it's kind of similar to that, and they're basically trying to impose Islam onto every person. They're trying to make everyone Muslim, as opposed to a lot of these Christian, empires, especially in modern times. They don't try to impose Christianity as much on people, right? An example, right? Like you can live in Spain and you can be a Christian, or you can be a Muslim, or you can be a Buddhist, or whatever the fuck. But if you want to live in fucking like Iraq, for example, you are going to be a Muslim. The government is going to ensure that publicly, at least, you follow the tenets of Islam. Whereas, in these Western countries, they follow Western liberalism, which is like the philosophy of all these countries. It's not as intense, right? Like there's no Christian country in the modern world that imposes its religion on people like these Islamist governments do. And Sudan, if I had to guess, even now is still not an exception to that. So yeah, and there was also exploitative practices from the government. So yeah, the Arab government, they were basically trying to Arabize the South, and they were also exploiting them for oil and whatever the fuck else they had. Farmland, right? Like the North, like I said, it's super deserty up there, and the South, it's more swampy. They get a lot more rain in the South. And so I'm sure they were exploiting them for their farmland, for their natural resources, and they were also trying to Arabize them, which broke about just, just like every rule of the treaty, right? Like the fucking guy Jafar, he basically gave them religious autonomy and just overall autonomy. And then this guy, Al Bashir, didn't break the treaty, but he didn't do anything to fucking help it. And so the area is rich in oil deposits, and the South is far more suitable for farming than the North, like I said. And during the war, the South experienced infighting as tensions between the Noor and Dinka flared. And so, like I said, the Dinka are the biggest tribe in South Sudan, but the Noor are the second biggest. The Dinka have always been the most powerful, but the Noor, even now, the Noor is still fighting back against them. And so the war lasted from 1983. And do you guys want to take a guess as to when this war ended? How long did the first one last? What was it, 11 years? Or wait, not 11 years, 17 years. So 17 years is how long the first war lasted. Do you think anyone got a little bit tired? Do you think they were like, I don't want another fucking, 2 decade civil war. I think we got to chill out a little bit here. So 1983 is when it started. Any guesses? Any guesses as to when it ended? Spoiler alert, it ended in 2005, and the South is still experiencing very intense tribal conflict. So the first war lasted for 17 years, and then the second one lasted for 22 years. And like I said, the Arabized North was already fighting the South basically since, I mean, since like the 10th century. So South Sudan basically has been in a 1,000-year war against Islamic conquest, dude. It's fucking, it's insane. It's the North has kind of left the South alone at this point, but a 1,000 years, and that just kind of goes to show these guys got to come up with a better fucking game plan, dude. The British built the one of the biggest empires, the second biggest empire, the most expansive empire, surely, that the world has ever seen, and they did it in like 500 years. And the Muslims, the Muzzies, dude, they can't figure out how to get South Sudan. And South Sudan, during I think the first and second civil war, experienced like massive amounts of famine. And so they couldn't even take it then, dude. Like the people of the country were literally starving to death, and they still couldn't, Islamicize South Sudan. It's absurd. And so, due to scorched earth tactics from the North and economic sanctions, the South experienced massive famines, like I said, that killed at least a million people, or at least a million civilians. Forget about the soldiers for a second. At least a million civilians were killed, or died at least, due to the North basically destroying all their farmland and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think during that civil war, like 2 million people died, and most of them, once again, were civilians in the South. All right. South Sudan exists as a country, though, so it had to have won one of these civil wars. And so in 2011, the South became independent after an election was held in accordance with the 2005 peace agreement. So in 2005, if you look at the two wars and you don't really consider the future in any of them, both of them were technically stalemates. Both of them, neither side really got what they wanted. The North did kind of get what they wanted. They really fucked up the South in both of those wars, but they were both technically stalemates. And so in 2011, though, as part of the peace agreement, I guess, South Sudan, I'll count that as a win, dude. South Sudan. South Sudan really doesn't have a lot of wins on the record book historically ever, and so I'll count the second Sudanese civil war as a W. Mark that as a W, dude. No asterisk next to it. That's a W for South Sudan in my book. They became their own country. Yes, they didn't technically win the second Sudanese civil war, but they they got what they wanted. What they wanted was not. It didn't result in the greatest thing ever, but even before that, it really wasn't great there. And so now we're on. Do you guys want to guess? You guys want to guess what happened next after South Sudan became their own country? You want to guess what happened? We got another civil war, dude. We got three on our hands. They've South Sudan really officially has been enveloped in war since the year 1955, dude. Jesus fucking Christ. The English might need to colonize it again. This is becoming a serious fucking problem. You've been enveloped in civil war since 1955. They were basically already fighting the Arabs since the 10th century, so like 900 AD. So for like 1,000 years already, they were fighting the Arabs in the north, and the Arabs were taking them as slaves and stuff. And then now we're going on about 60 years of fucking civil war in South Sudan. Jesus goddamn Christ. That's crazy. That's absurd. It's it's the poorest country on earth. They're the worst at everything in South Sudan, and that shouldn't be a surprise. It's just these poor fucking people, dude. It's the worst place to be born. I don't think it maybe in the history of the world it's not the worst place to be born, but right now it's probably the worst place to be born, and I'm including India on that list. All right, that includes India. South Sudan is worse than India, right? India is a country that is filled with human shit and plastic garbage everywhere. And South Sudan is somehow worse than that, right? Like at least India has food to make shit, to make poop. Right, that's what I'm talking about when I say shit. I'm talking about literal human shit that fills their streets and their rivers and just about everything in that country. And at least they have plastic. South Sudan does not have either of those things. They don't have plastic, and they don't have enough food to create human excrement like they do in India. So it is by far the worst place to be born in the world. And that's really saying something. Like a lot of Africa is not too dissimilar from South Sudan. Like a lot of Africa has been experiencing civil war and Arabization for centuries, a millennia, close to a millennia. A lot of these people have been experiencing war. But South Sudan, they've just got the fucking worst of it. In South Sudan, and it does kind of make sense why they've gotten the worst of it, because it's pretty close to the Middle East. It's really the only black African country that's like super close to the Middle East. Like it's just like a hop skipping away from like Saudi Arabia. It's really not that far away. So goddamn, they've just been getting fucked over there, dude. So now we're on to the South Sudanese Civil War, which shouldn't be confused with the First Sudanese Civil War or the Second Sudanese Civil War. And so in 2013, South Sudan fell into civil war again. This war was caused by ethnic tensions and failure from the new government. The current president, Salva Kiir, and people call him Kiir, but his technical last name is Mayardit, something like that. has been in office since 2005. So basically, when the Second Sudanese Civil War ended, they were given a lot more autonomy, and this guy was the leader of South Sudan. He officially became the president in 2012, maybe. I don't know when they held their first elections, but he's led the country since 2005. So for what are we going on? 20 years. This guy's got 2 decades in office. It's I don't care how good of a fucking leader you are. You are not getting elected into office for 2 decades. This guy. And this guy, he is Dinka. That's an important thing to consider. And so Mayardit, fuck it. I'm just gonna call him what everyone else calls him. I'm just gonna call him Salva. Salva has been accused of massive corruption in favoring Dinka ethnic interests, and that's like a big thing, right? Like everyone, you look at the government of South Sudan, it's basically all Dinka people. The president is Dinka. I'm sure the vice president is Dinka. I'm sure everyone. I think almost the entire military is Dinka people. And so the rest of the tribes are like, dude, what the fuck? Like, the leader, he's like, no, I don't favor any ethnic group. But then you look at every single one of the positions. And to be fair, the Dinka are the largest ethnic group there, but it's it's not like it's not like there's not other ones there, dude. It's not like fucking China or whatever where everyone is Han Chinese. There are other large ethnic minorities within the country in every single position of power, basically the entire military. They're all Dinka people. And once again, I'm not scared of this fucking dude coming after me. This guy can't even get a handle on his own fucking country. He can't even get a handle. I'm sure he's going to get a coup attempted at least against him within the next 5 years. This guy, I'm not scared of him at all. So I feel fine talking shit about him. And so Uganda and Sudan, who Silva used to be the vice president of before South Sudan became fully independent. Silva was the vice president of the one Sudan, right? Like when Sudan and South Sudan were one country, he was at one point the vice president of that place. Supported the government against the rebels while the UN stepped in to protect civilians. And you hear about, like, I've heard about the UN peacekeeping forces a lot, especially when it comes to Africa. And I'm really interested in Africa and African history. And I always thought, like, the peacekeeping forces fought on the side of, like, the government or the side of the rebels. I thought they picked a side. The UN, as much as I hate them, as much as I fucking despise the UN, they're not taking a side in this war. They're not arming the rebels. They're not arming the fucking or fighting with either side. They're just there to protect civilians. They're there to protect against human rights abuses, right? Like massacres, genocides, forced famine, shit like that. And so, hey, a little bit of credit to the UN there. They don't get much credit, and they really shouldn't, but they do deserve credit for that, for protecting the civilians. But look, despite the UN's effort, thousands of ethnic minority civilians were killed during massacres. Like, there was one big famous massacre. It's called, like, the Boosie Massacre. The Bussy Massacre. But during that massacre, 400 Noor people were killed in a village, obviously by Dinka soldiers. And I think the UN peacekeeping force is still there. The civil war officially ended in 2020, but according to Sudanese human rights chairwoman Yasmin Suka, violence has not decreased. It really has only increased. She said, like, during the height of the civil war, like, they're experiencing more violence than they. South Sudan, dude. God damn it, someone's got to step in. South Sudan needs, like, they need a Hitler. I'm not, maybe not a Hitler, and maybe not like a Stalin, not someone that's going to commit a genocide, but they do. If any country has ever needed a dictator that's going to come in and rule with an iron fist, it's South Sudan. South Sudan, they really need someone who's going to come in and not take any shit from anybody, kick out all the foreign interests, and just fucking stop the violence, dude. Like, that's what's necessary in this moment. And that's a thing that I don't think a lot of people think about, right? Like, everyone's like, oh, dictators are always fucking evil, kings are always bad, emperors are always bad. But it's like, this is a situation. There's nothing, you can't make policy to stop this from happening. The violence in South Sudan is so entrenched in the people there. You're not going to end it by, like, writing a law being like, oh, everyone needs to be nice to each other. You guys just need to be nice to each other. Have you ever considered being nice? Right? Like some fucking white woman social worker coming over and being like, I understand where you guys are coming from, but, like, we need to manage our anger better, right? That's not going to fucking work there. They need a dictator, and a good dictator too. Like this guy, Salva, he is a dictator. He is facilitating these genocides, basically. He is incredibly corrupt. He is selling out his country to foreign interests, but he's not like a good dictator. He's not like a dictator that some dictators most of the time are pretty wrong in their thoughts, right? But at least some of them care about their country. This guy Salva, he's not that at all. He doesn't care about the country. He continues to fuck it over. And so free elections in South Sudan have been postponed to 2025, and tensions continue to rise along ethnic lines. As of now, the White Army of the Nuer people, like I said, Nuer's second biggest tribe in South Sudan, continue their fight along with other rebel militias against Salva's government. And South Sudan ranks at or near the bottom of every single index for quality of life, right? They're not the poorest country. I think Burundi is technically the poorest country. I'm sure they're not like the most violent. I'm sure their HDI, Human Development Index, isn't the lowest, but like it's it should be. It's a terrible fucking place to live. It's awful. It sucks very very bad, and I feel very bad for the people that live. Like I don't really do that often. I don't really look at like a country on the other side of the world and like really go like I feel so bad for. I know like a lot of people do that. I know a lot of people are like, oh, those poor people over there, they need help. They need help from the U.S. government. Like I don't do that. I don't really. Whatever doesn't bother me. Like South Sudan, and this is how you know that the government like our justification for being in Afghanistan until like 2021 or however the fuck long we were there. Like the justification for that was like, oh, we're fighting against the Taliban, who's like committing these human rights abuses and like doing all these bad things. That's how I know they're lying about that because not a single like U.S. troop. I'm sure maybe there were some fighters in the UN, right? Some peacekeepers that were from the U.S. that were sent as the peacekeeping force to South Sudan, but like the U.S. government hasn't done anything about about like the fucking just general shittiness that's going on there, and shittiness doesn't really even begin to describe it. Right? Like it's like calling the Holocaust shitty. It's like being like Hitler, you asshole, why'd you do that? Like it's it's awful. Like I said, millions of people in South Sudan have been killed due to forced famine and ethnic cleansing and genocide and stuff like that. It's not great, dude. It's I was really when I was reading the history of it, I was like I was maybe looking for a little bit of hope. There's not a single W on that list, dude. These guys, South Sudan, are the Cleveland Browns of Africa. And that's saying a fucking lot, dude, because Africa as a continent has been enveloped in violence for thousands of years. And South Sudan is somehow been fucked over the worst of all of them. They were fucked over by the Arabs during the slave trade. I'm sure the Anglo-Egyptian, colony didn't help them at all. The Sudanese completely destroyed every single aspect of every single one of their lives, forced famine on them, stole all their natural resources, and now they're in a civil war where a Dinka leader is basically oppressing everyone else, and he's not even helping the Dinka. He's really not helping them that much. So yeah, not great for South Sudan. I'm sure regular Sudan isn't doing a hell of a lot better. It's still in Africa after all. But, I mean, South Sudan, they got the short end of the stick on every single deal, which is ironic because I'm sure their sticks are quite long, if you know what I mean. They're all look up the Dinka people and really any Nilotic tribe. They're all like 7 foot tall, like incredibly dark skinned black dudes. So I'm sure they all have gigantic sticks. Big old pencil dick penises, dude. I'm sure. I'm sure that's what the South Sudanese are working at. So hey, found a bright spot there. I'm sure they all have big old dicks. And they're all tall as shit, dude. Like the average height of a Dinka person is like 6'3", and that includes the women. They're all giant, dude. Like it's not rare. Like Bull and Manute Bull, his dad, tallest NBA player ever, 7'7". He was from South Sudan. A lot of these people, a lot of Sudanese people, go on to play in the NBA. So you got to look at the bright side there. Hey, maybe 0.000000001% of you will move to the United States and kind of completely abandon your country. So hey, but at least they're not, continuing to live in South Sudan, which is the ultimate punishment, dude. And It's so funny. We talked about this a little bit during current events, but Trump is deporting 8 violent criminals to South Sudan. He first deported them to Djibouti, and now he's sending them to South Sudan. So that's what we got to do, dude. That if you really want to stop illegal immigration, have that be the fucking threat. Have the threat be, look, we're gonna deport you to South Sudan. Like, drop a bunch of like propaganda flyers into like Mexico and Venezuela and like Central America about how shitty South Sudan is, and then impose a law being like, if you enter the country illegally, you're going to South Sudan, dude. That's basically like, if South Sudan is gonna be the shitty, awful country that has nothing good in it, you might as well use them as like the boogeyman for illegal immigrants, right? You might as well be like, hey, don't be jumping that fence, dude. Don't be taking a little swim across the Rio Grande because we're going to be sending your ass to fucking South Sudan, dude. South Sudan is so shitty that the racist president doesn't even care about the people that he thinks is like the master race or whatever. Like, that's how shitty it is there, dude. That has to be the threat. That has to be the threat against illegal immigration. Man, like, you want to go to South Sudan, dude? It's like when a little kid doesn't want to go to bed, being like, if you don't go to sleep, the boogeyman's gonna get you, right? That's what South Sudan has to be for these illegal immigrants. Like, fuck the alligator prison that he started. Fuck. What's it called? Alligator Alcatraz? Fuck that place, dude. Send these motherfuckers to South Sudan. 'Cause I guarantee you, illegal immigration will drop by 120%, dude. Illegal immigrants will start self-deporting if the threat of being sent to South Sudan is there. Because this place is just, it's awful. It's horrible. I do, I do sometimes like think about like, I don't know, becoming like a warlord in South Sudan because it is the Wild West, dude. If you want to know what the Wild West was like true lawlessness, go to South Sudan, dude. If that'll end your romanticization or whatever the fuck the word is of the Wild West because that's what South Sudan is. It's completely lawless, but I guess there probably is some opportunity there, Lack of lawlessness, or not lack of lawlessness is the presence of lawlessness, I should say. Hey, there's some opportunity there. If you don't value your life in any way, shape, or form, head over to South Sudan, dude. I don't know. They've got oil, they've got farmland. Hey, go be a warlord in South Sudan. You're really not going to hurt the country either. Like, the incentive against doing that would be like, well, I don't want to hurt the people who live there. You're going to help them if anything, dude. Like, seriously. There's nothing a person can do in South Sudan that would harm that country. Like, that's how awful it is there. Like, there's nothing you could do. There's seriously, you could commit a genocide and it would just be like a continuation of what is already happening there. So, if you've ever wanted to be a warlord or an arms dealer or a diamond miner or a fucking, have a big ass ranch in Africa, head over to South Sudan, dude. But yeah, I don't know, if you pray for South Sudan. And if you're Muslim, I would say not pray for South Sudan because that's kind of like the root of all the problems there. Hey, look, I'm not mad at you guys. I know a lot of people are Islamophobic or whatever. I don't really care that much about it, but like, it's if you're Muslim, I would just say ignore South Sudan as a whole because you're gonna end up causing more problems than you're gonna help, right? It's kind of a thing of like, when someone gets shot and the paramedics are like all around the guy, like packing the wound or whatever, and someone's trying to like get in, being like, "How can I help? How can I help?" You can't help in this situation. Hey, I hate to break your heart. Maybe you have the best intentions in the world. Looking at it historically, if you're Muslims, you probably don't have the best intentions toward South Sudan. But even if you do have good intentions, I'd say just leave it alone for a little bit. You know what I mean? I would not get too involved in South Sudan if I were a Muslim. But that's all I've got for this episode, dude. Like I said, pray for South Sudan or go to South Sudan and become a warlord or an arms dealer or a diamond miner, whatever you want to do. Do it in South Sudan, dude, because you can't hurt that country, dude. It's that's the David Goggins country. They can't hurt me. Can't hurt me. It's literally there's nothing you could. Those people are so immune to violence. I feel like yeah, I just feel so bad for them. You can't hear that story and not feel good for them or not feel bad for them, right? You have to, there's no good in that story, right? Like, you look at Sudan now, they have oil deposits. I'm sure they've nationalized their oil. Like I said, they were ruled by socialists for a number of years, so I'm sure they nationalized their oil. I'm sure there's something decent going on in Sudan. I'm sure they have like they have some W's in the in the fucking record book. South Sudan does not have a single one, dude. You look at that. That shit's a fucking L factory. That shit is just L after L after L after. It's it's bad, dude. An Asian would not be able to read that record book because there's too many L's in there. They just error, error, error. It's it's not great at all. But look, if you're Christian or Buddhist or really any religion other than Muslim, I'd say send up a prayer for South Sudan real quick because they really need your fucking help, dude. This is this isn't like a little kid with cancer. This is an entire country with something that is 10 times worse than cancer. I'd send one up real quick to the big man upstairs, unless the big man upstairs is Allah or Muhammad or whoever Muslims pray to. 'Cause it's they have not helped that place in any way, shape, or form, really at any point in their history. So, and the Christians really they haven't helped it a ton either, but what they haven't done is go in there and cause famine and steal, millions of people as slaves. They did that in other places, but they did not do that in South Sudan. So yeah, teas and prayers for the boys over in South Sudan. I hope things get better. I don't know. I don't plan on becoming a warlord anytime soon. Look, if my entire family dies in a car crash, sure, I'll go over to South Sudan and become a warlord and try to fix that place up a little bit. You know what I mean? Be a little handyman. Bring over my socket wrench and uh, give it a little work. But I mean, it's really, really other than that, there's not a whole lot that can be done for that country. Poor people, dude. And that's like a weird thing for me to feel because I look at these other countries and and people are like, oh, we need to, allow fucking like mass migration from the Middle East or wherever the fuck. And I'm like, no, we don't, dude. Fuck 'em. Let them fight each other. I look at South Sudan and I'm like, dude, we need to maybe not let all of them into our country because they, like I said, have been entrenched in violence for like every single generation since the year 900 AD, right? But so I think bringing them over might not be the smartest idea, but I think helping them out a little bit, sending them a fucking bag of rice or something, that would have hurt too much. Like the USAID thing or whatever. I'm not for giving a ton of foreign aid to every single fucking country on earth, right? Especially Israel. I don't I just don't support it like other people. I know some people are like, "Oh, there's American interest over there." Well, there's also American interest in America that need money. But if we're going to be giving money to fucking anyone, it should all be to South Sudan, dude. Fuck Israel. Israel they're winning the war. I mean, you look at it, that they're not being nice to the people they're fighting the war against, especially to the civilians that live there, but they're winning it. So fuck them and give all the money you're giving to Israel to South Sudan. Maybe they'll give us some of their oil or something, dude. But I mean, and look, I don't want to give the CIA any fucking ideas, right, about getting involved in South Sudan. So maybe I shouldn't be calling on the government to help them because they never do help anyone. But yeah, it's if anyone should be getting help, it should be South Sudan. It's they're not just drowning, dude. They're at the bottom of the ocean, dude. They're not like drowning, flailing in the waves at the beach. They've sunk to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and I don't even think they want to get out at this point, dude. They're down there with fucking sharks and jellyfish and whatever strange creatures live at the bottom of the ocean, and they're surrounded by those things, and those things will never leave them. But it is the Wild West. So yeah, it's so sad, dude. It's so sad. There's nothing good about it. But I'm sure there is something good about it. I'm sure there's some like super fucking hot 7 foot tall black chick that lives there that's like an absolute fucking goddess. So maybe that's I don't know, something to look forward to. I don't know. It's so hard to find a positive there, dude. Usually, especially when I'm not hangry, dude. Like when I'm hungry, I get so goddamn pissed, and maybe that's why South Sudan has been involved in so many wars for so long, right? Like since the 1950s, they've been basically enveloped in perpetual famine. So maybe that's why they're so fucking pissed at each other, dude. They're all just hangry. Give those boys a Snicker, dude. Send a fucking shipping container full of Snickers over to South Sudan, and maybe that'll help a little bit. Maybe that'll calm them down. That was a fucking burp if I've ever heard one. Goddamn. But maybe that'll calm the boys over in South Sudan a little bit, dude. Just send them some Twix, some Milky Ways. Give them the Snickers, dude. Snickers. If you're listening to this, and I know that you are, dude, Get the U.S. government to drop like a fucking C-130 full of Snickers over there, dude, because those people, they're not them when they're hungry. I truly believe that. They just need they just need one king size, dude. They just need one king size from the checkout aisle of the grocery store, and they'll be calmed down, dude. They'll be chilled out. Please, 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 someone just send over a little bit of food, dude. A little bit of, I'd say Snickers. I'm sure they've received plenty of bags of rice from the UN and from like UNICEF over the years. Give the boys a Snickers, dude. Let them taste that nougaty, fucking chocolatey, peanutty deliciousness. Give the boys a fucking Snicker. That's what they need. That's what they need, dude. But look, T's and P's. If you're not a Muslim, sorry. Sorry. Guys can't be involved in this game, right? Like it's like trans people trying to get in the Olympics. You just can't be. I don't hate you, but you can't be involved in this game. All right, Muslims, you just can't. You can't be doing this. It's look. I know some of you guys are trying to help. You've done enough, right? And I know it hurts to hear that. I know that's like a line in every dramatic movie ever. You've helped me enough. Right? I know that's a line in every single one of those fucking movies. But that is my message to the Muslims. You've helped them enough. You've done enough, dude. But that's all I've got for this episode, guys. I hope you have a good day, good week, good year. Thank you to the new listeners. It's very kind of you. I am thankful for that. Don't get it wrong. I am very thankful to you guys. Thank you to everyone that's rated the podcast and followed. Anyone that's listened for even a second. Thankful for that. And if I made you laugh or if I taught you some new information that you didn't know, it's probably not true. It's probably not true information. I'm not the most intelligent guy ever. I'm not the best at, paraphrasing things. But if you learned some new information or laughed or whatever, happy. You probably didn't laugh, let's be fucking honest, but whatever. I hope you have a good day, a good week, a good year, a good life, a good rest of your summer, dude. It's not too hot this summer, dude. I don't think we've had a day above 100 degrees. Look, I'm sure if you like work outside doing concrete or like farm work or whatever, you're like, shut the fuck up. It's been hot as hell. But where I live, I don't think we've had a day above 95. So I'm not mad at that, dude. I'm not too upset at that. But yeah, all I've got. Good day, good week, good year, good life, good summer. Yeah, just chill out, man. Just South Sudan. South Sudan, it seems like you guys are holding on to a lot of internalized anger, maybe internalized homophobia or Islamophobia, and I think you guys need to let go of that, okay? Peace.